Right, good evening and welcome to a new episode of our program, Daily Debate. The President has just concluded or addressed the concluding session of the World Youth Forum that continued for 4 consecutive days, filled with many sessions that included all what could be what could be described as very important files. Throughout those 4 days, many of the new files were discussed in sessions that were conducted by youths who came from around the whole world to participate in this forum, also to interact in a very constructive way in order to find some of the solutions or put the vision towards those important files. Just a few minutes ago, the President announced the recommendations of the forum, and they were around 10 recommendations, very important recommendations, which showed how was the President keen to follow up the conclusion of each session that was conducted during the forum and get the outcome of it. We'll be speaking about that in our episode and more, and we'll be discussing the recommendations that were just announced by the President in our episode with our distinguished guest, Dr. محمد عبدالحليم, Professor of Political Science. Thank you very much for joining us. And Dr. Yahya Abdelkader, former Counselor to the Minister of Tourism. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Right, before we delve into our discussion, let's first have this quick look on the report. And the World Youth Forum envisage a planet free of conflicts. Let's watch.
President Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi attended on Tuesday the closing ceremony of the 2nd edition of the World Youth Forum in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh on Tuesday. Earlier, the 4-day forum issued its recommendations. The forum, which was held under the auspices of President el-Sisi, gathered more than 5,000 youth participants from 160 countries over 30 sessions, including key officials, intellectuals, media figures, journalists, experts, public figures, and human rights figures. It discussed a number of issues, including development, peace, and creativity, with a special focus on esports, empowering those with disabilities, entrepreneurship, and gender. Through plenary sessions, seminars, workshops, and roundtable discussions, the forum engaged youth from around the globe in an enriching setup, allowing them to exchange and recommend initiatives to decide makers and influential figures. The forum aimed at engaging its participants with policymakers and providing networking opportunities for youth, aiming at bringing about positive change, portraying a magnificent and powerful will to the new generation of young people seeking to establish a real and effective change in this world. Earlier on Tuesday, President el-Sisi received his Sudanese counterpart Omar Hassan al-Bashir in Sharm el-Sheikh. The two leaders held talks that focused on means to foster bilateral ties in various domains, in addition to a number of regional issues of mutual concern. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said the talks between the two heads of state reflected a strong desire and will between the two leaders to consolidate bilateral ties in various domains in accordance with the historic ties that bind the two brotherly nations. Meanwhile, President el-Sisi participated in Peace Marathon with youth participating in the forum. The President addressed the gathering, welcoming youth taking part in it. He said holding the event reflects a true belief that dialogue and exchanging views between all civilizations and cultures is the only way to overcome challenges facing humanity. He said the forum has helped in finding common grounds among new generations to build a better future for their countries based on peace and development. On Monday and on the 3rd day of the forum, President el-Sisi attended a session of the Arab-Africa Summit simulation model. Addressing the session, he said Egypt would submit the final statement of the simulation model to both the African Union and the Arab League. The simulation model focused on the current challenges and disputes in the region and the African continent. Also, President el-Sisi attended a session dubbed "How Do We Believe Future Leaders?" Tani. Also on Monday, President el-Sisi attended a session dubbed "How Do We Build Future Leaders?" The president addressed the session saying Egypt had started a program for primary and high school education. The head of state noted that Egypt was keen on developing the idea of qualifying and training youth to select those capable of being leaders. Earlier, he attended a session on the impact of social media sites. A number of experts addressed this session. Speaking during the session, Sisi said recommendation of the forum would include forming a national committee to set a strategy for dealing with social media. Sisi warned that intelligence agencies and terrorist groups use social media to achieve their goals, saying that means of spreading rumors changed in the era of social media. This session tackled electronic bullying, means of combating electronic crimes, and legislations needed to protect users. On the sidelines of the forum, President Sisi met with the head of the Presidential Bureau of Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Hamad bin Zayed Al Nahyan. During the meeting, President Sisi expressed his gratitude over the participation of the United Arab Emirates official in the forum and delivered sincere greetings to Abu Dhabi Crown Prince محمد bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Ghadi said the president praised the supportive role of the UAE to Egypt in its development process and hailed bilateral ties which created a successful example of joint coordination and consultation. Sisi stressed the importance of fostering relations between the two countries in various domains. For his part, Sheikh Hamad said that his country's keenness on enhancing cooperation with Egypt and joint cooperation to maintain security and stability in the Middle East. Sisi also met with Oman's Foreign Minister Youssef Ibn Alawi. The meeting was attended by Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri. President Sisi held the strong ties between the two countries, stressing his keenness on boosting ties with Oman in all fields. Sisi stressed the importance of continuing consultations between Egypt and Oman over regional issues of mutual concern. For his part, the Omani top diplomat praised the distinguished ties between Egypt and Oman, stressing his country's desire to enhance bilateral ties in all fields.
باسم كل الشعب المصري بتوجه لكل الشباب اللي موجود معانا وحتى الشباب العالم كله بالشكر والتقدير والمحبة. أرض سيناء اللي احنا بنتكلم عليها دي اللي كانوا بيحاولوا إن هم يخلوها أرض للشر، واحنا قلنا لا يمكن أبدا تكون غير أرض السلام وأرض المحبة، ودي الأرض اللي تجلى الخالق العظيم عليها في شرم الشيخ وفي سانت كاترين هناك في جبل موسى على أرض مصر المحفوظة بأمر الله سبحانه وتعالى. تحيا مصر، يحيا السلام، تحيا المحبة، يحيا الاستقرار، يحيا شباب العالم، يحيا شباب العالم. شكرا جزيلا.
Right, welcome back, and indeed, long live the youth worldwide of the whole world, and long live Egypt, the land of love and peace. And yes, indeed. Getting back to our episode today, and as we said, we'll be speaking about the recommendations that were made by and announced by the President today during the closing session. Let me again welcome our dear guests, Dr. محمد عبدالحليم, Professor of Political Science, and Dr. Yahya Abdelkader, former Counselor to the Minister of Tourism. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us.
A pleasure.
And as we heard together right before this episode, the President's recommendations, they included 10 important recommendations. Let me start with one important announcement, that Egypt will adopt the simulation model of the African Union and the Arab League. There was this simulation to the model for the African Union and the Arab League, in which they have put the vision towards important conflicts and important problems in the Arab world and the African Union in the African continent at large. First, how do you view this adoption to the vision of those youth presenting this simulation models to the Arab League and to the African Union?
Right, that sort of simulation model seems to be quite very much successful from the way those people would act and react during the course of their own intermingling and addressing, as much as proposing questions for His Own Excellency, Mr. Fattah al-Sisi. You can really, at first glance, actually, that they are exchanging and practicing a great deal of democracy, a sort of thing that they had never, ever been entitled to do during the previous years. That is in the first instance. Second, well, the sort of the simulation of the model of the African Union is a sort of the, what you might call a miniature. It's a sort of a minimized portrait of what would seem to be in the due course of time, actually, particularly when Egypt will preside over the African Summit in 2019.
Union, yes.
And in the meantime, you know, I would really say that Egypt will be occupying such a strategic role, particularly, you know, towards the negotiations of solving the problematic situations of the erection of the Renaissance Dam, particularly when it would reach at some time actually to cul-de-sac, so to speak. But owing to the international diplomacy, as much as the cooperation of the international diplomacy with the presidential authority, actually, and sending Mr. Sameh Shukri, Foreign Minister, actually, more than one time, actually, more than one respect, to different territories of the world, including Ethiopia itself, you can really find that great advance start to be taken. And much the same way that, you know, I mean, youths are practicing a very good and very striking example of the status quo, of trying every now and again to solve their own problematic issues, diplomatic, you know, I mean, issues that are for quite a long period of time very much far from being confirmed, far from being solved. In the first instance, as I just said, that part of the democratic opinionations, actually, that would be part and parcel of the infrastructure of that sort of simulation of the model of the African Union is trying to reach to the heart of the African Union and the African continent, actually, I mean, resuming the ties that had stopped for quite a long period of time.
Actually, if I may comment here, but this simulation was put not just by Egyptian youth, but rather an interaction between Egyptian youth with African, Arab, and also youths from...
Absolutely, as it stands from the word,
yes,
from the title of the World Youth Forum,
yes,
that includes 5,000 youths, actually, from
yes,
all over the world, here,
yes,
there, and everywhere, including there and then, actually, about 150 countries.
Yes.
So part and parcel of the strategy, actually, and part of the strategy of success of the forum is the existence, actually, of the democratic opinions on the part of those Egyptian youths. So when I said at the very beginning that youths are there on the part of the Egyptian side, they are, you know, I mean, establishing their own role of establishing interests, actually, just by way of trying to solve those problems. They have very good striking examples of pushing forward some illustrative examples, negotiating, you know, I mean, far from being, you know, I mean, issues that for, as I've just said, quite for a long period of time, very much far from being confirmed. And the sort of the exchanging of the give and take dialogue on the part of the, you know, His Own Excellency, Mr. Fattah al-Sisi, you know, was very much democratic to a greater extent. I would really insist in saying that for the first time within the Egyptian political sort of life actually among those youngsters, among those youth actually, that they are to be confronted with the presidential authority for, you know, for life. I mean, exchanging, you know, I mean, questions and directing their own challenges and that sort of thing.
Yes, that was during the dialogue that took place between the president and youths. Yes, indeed. If we go to another important, of course, but I have to say that adopting such a simulation reflects how we are putting youth as a first priority for us and how we really admire very much young generations' creativity and innovation.
Well, this is part of the strategy of His Own Excellency, actually, that he's trying to achieve every now and again by the promotion and establishment of, you know, I mean, the National Academy for enabling youth, actually, for leadership.
Yes,
and for
that we'll speak about, because that was another announcement. Aswan. Aswan would be the capital or the African youth capital for the year, for this upcoming year.
Yes.
How do you view this, and what does this reflect, and how will that reflect on an upcoming season? You know that Aswan and Luxor is truly, we're going to the season where they should be filled with tourists.
Exactly. Well, Aswan really been at other times, you know, historical times of Egypt, you know, like a great capital, you know, like, and the doorway to Africa, because, you know, like, since Pharaonic times, you know, Egypt had very good ties, you know, like with Nubia and Africa for commodities and exchange of trade, you know, like with the land of Pont and all this. So Aswan has been like a great trade center historically since time immemorial. And now it's like one of the top tourist destinations, attractive for Egypt, you know, like worldwide. So, and now we have like universities, institutions, industries, the Great High Dam, petrochemical industries. So, and now we have again, you know, like Dr. Magdi Yaqub is having worldwide, you know, like reputable medical
hospital right there.
Exactly, medical center.
The Cardial Hospital.
Exactly. So it's a very wise, you know, like decision to pick Aswan as, you know, like the future destination venue for conducting, you know, like the upcoming World Youth Forum. And it's has like many facilities, you know, like infrastructures. It have hospitality, you know, like support services. It have an international airport. Even like it's like the causeway, you know, like to Sudan, you know, like through, you know, like Nile and other facilities, and road too as well. So it's a very, you know, like natural, you know, like selection, picking up to be like the hub for conducting the upcoming World Youth Forum for Africa, for the Arab world, and for Egypt.
Aswan, you know that next year Egypt will preside over the African Union.
Yes.
So Aswan as a choice has a significance, don't you think so?
It is, because the historical role of Aswan, like since Pharaonic time, and again since modern time, when President Nasser and the Egyptian people decided to build the High Dam, and it has been like a link for the for Egypt and Africa through our ties, you know, like with African countries.
Indeed.
And lots of there's like institutes and institutions and enterprises over there linking Egypt, you know, like to Africa, to Kenya, to Uganda, to Ghana, to all the sub-Sahara continent, you know, like in Africa. So it's a great choice.
Yes. Assigning the Egyptian Academy for training, or that is called the Presidential Leadership Program, for training African and Arabs as well. That is beside the Egyptians, of course, calibers and prepare them for leadership and training them. How did you take such an announcement, especially that was put in the frame of a question during this dialogue the President conducted with youths?
Well, from day one, actually, of his own presidential period, actually, the previous period, I would say, I mean, Mr. Fattah is quite keen, actually, on training, on promoting, on pushing forward youth, actually, to a greater extent, actually, to achieve, you know, prodigious achievements, and to try to encouragement and encourage them actually to a greater extent to try to assume their own natural role in life, which is, you know, I mean, assume the role of being leaders and presidents or would-be listeners, you know. And in the meantime, you know, I mean, compared with, you know, the fact that 60% of the population of Egypt are mostly out of use, he's keeping an eye actually on that sort of thing. And in the meantime, you know, I mean, trying to encourage them, as I've just said, to a greater extent, training them, because he does know really right from the early start that those people are very much enthusiastic, very much courageous. They have got aspirations and dreams. And from the motto, actually, that we have had at the very beginning of the World Youth Forum, that is the revitalization and revitalizing, actually, the, you know, humanity on a large scale. You can really, you know, I mean, anticipate that the charismatic leader is keeping an eye, actually, on promoting their own interests in life as much as, you know, I mean, trying to keep with their own, you know, I mean, intentions, actually, or would-be dreams, particularly when in one of the sessions, actually, Mr. Fattah Sisi, His Own Excellency, you know, I mean, advised the population at large and the youth, actually, the 5,000 individual figures, actually, full of aspirations and dreams and those interesting notes in life. Brecht's honesty, that was his own dream to them. He didn't say, actually, be honest or try to be as much as sincere as can be. His own invitation, actually, for those people is to be as much sincere and practice sincerity and to try to keep with their own dreams, no matter how long they may be. And he ended it, actually, with a very marvelous note that the validity of the dreams never ending. That is, we don't have an expiry date for dreams. We don't have an ending line, actually, for dreams, no matter how long or prolonged they may seem to be. This is a clear indication on the part of His Own Excellency, actually, to try to prepare the road for them as much as, actually, encourage them, yes, not only to be part and parcel of the strategic as much as the schematic program, actually, of ruling Egypt, but actually to be part and parcel of the decision taking, of the decision making as well. That's why he was keen at, right from the early start.
Yes, very much indeed. Another important announcement was the adoption of the Egyptian or the state of a rule of protecting lives and eradicating terrorism as a right.
Yes.
One of the rights of civilians, or one of the human rights. Of course, this is a principle and it's by law.
Yes.
But announcing this at this particular forum, at a time when we are confronting terrorism and we have just witnessed a very hateful crime just one day ahead of the inauguration of the forum.
Yes.
How did you read that?
Well, actually, I have to state that, you know, like President Fattah Sisi, you know, like he emerged as a statesman par excellence, you know, like through the World Youth Forum, due to his initiatives, vision, and you know, like implementation of the policy to combat, you know, like terrorism, violence, and hatred on an unstoppable scale. Because it's, as he emphasized, you know, he was talking, he took an example of Syria, for example. I said this country has been ruined, like hundreds of thousands of people, you know, like has been victimized by this nearly like civil war between factions of the nation. And he talked about the material damage, you know, like of the cities, of the lives, and that would cost like $1 trillion, you know, like to reconstruct and renovate and create, you know, like a new Syria again, you know. So he was giving this example that if people, you know, like in their nation and the youth, he was addressing, you know, like the 5,000 coming from 150 countries, if they are not careful about protecting their nations, their families, their cities, they are going to be part of this. And he was stressing the abuse and misuse of social media, how this can be destructive among the youth. And he's talking about like the digital networking.
Actually, that was one of the announcements and recommendations.
Exactly,
yes. maximizing the benefit from the social media instead of and seeing the negative effects of the usage,
and resorting to its abuse and like misuse and misinformation, which is misleading. Yes. And create tensions and conflicts within the country, and people start fighting each other, like even on a football game or whatever, on that scale. So the announcement of His Excellency about fighting and combating hatred, violence, and bigotism, terrorism is very meaningful, because Egypt and worldwide has been hurt on a daily basis. Look at the whole world. On a daily basis we have victims fallen in third world countries and advanced countries, day and night. So this is a very meaningful declaration by His Excellency, and hopefully this is going to be taken within considerations of Arab League, of the African Summit, and the world and civic societies and organizations.
We have to put into mind also the timing of each and every time we're hit by a terrorist crime. It is always either ahead of an important event Egypt will witness, or right after
exactly
our happiness of something good that
they have to spoil it from time to time.
Anyway, another important point, because before we run out of time, was the amendment of the law which is organizing the work of the NGOs and the civil society associations. And that was also raised during the youth forum, during the President's dialogue with the youth. How far do you think this is a step towards showing how Egypt is going on the democratic track?
Well, even the process of selecting, I would say, Sharm el-Sheikh is, as in itself, it really is very much strategic, very much historic, as much as geographic in the meantime importance. The fact that his own insistence on, establishing, a sort of a committee for...
Yes, I'll just take our correspondent, our senior correspondent from Sharm el-Sheikh, Taghreed Hussein. Hello? 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 Hello?
As the second edition of the World Youth Forum wraps up here from Sharm el-Sheikh, and as you can see, the whole session is bustling with the attendees, with youth from all over the world, after they heard the recommendations in the presence of His Excellency President Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi. And we're really honored to have with us the head of the Nigerian delegation attending the forum, Mr. Akepulu Dolapo. Wraps up the World Youth Forum. Tell me more about the recommendations. The recommendations came encouraging creativity. The recommendations came encouraging integration, Arab-African integration. They also came encouraging the ideas, and also a dedication of a prize for those who are creative of the youth. Tell me more about the importance and the significance of this important closing session, as well as the recommendations that you have heard.
Anyway, we thank God for this program, for this kind of forum that was under the auspices of the President, Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi. It's a great initiative, and one of the recommendations, one of the things is that Egypt has been made the headquarters of African youth, and as well there has been a framework to inform the African Union and the League of Arab States for there to be a collaboration between them. So the recommendations are very important. One of the recommendations, I participated in the model of the Arab-African Summit, and one of the recommendations is to establish a fund to counter terrorism in Africa and the Arab states, and as well to bring about peace among youth. And another recommendation is to create a fund for startups in Africa and the Arab states. This will bring about a collaboration. It is better for us to understand that development can be found within ourselves, within the region, within ourselves. We don't have to look outside for development any longer. We can be our best trade partners and our best friends. So we have geographical locations in common. So these common attributes that we have can bring us together to foster progress and to be unstoppable.
Definitely, and as you've said, you participated in putting ideas into action and translating this passion for our continent, for Africa, and attending all
Right, welcome back. I guess we'll be seeing such an interview with our dear correspondent, senior correspondent Hussein from Sharm el-Sheikh when technical problems are sorted out. Unfortunately, I have to end our episode here because time has just run out. And let me thank our dear guests, Dr. محمد عبدالحليم, Professor of Political Science. Thank you very much for being with us. Dr. Yahya Abdelkader, FOBA, Consulate with the Minister of Tourism. Thank you very much for being with us. And thank you very much for your input. Dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Tomorrow is another episode with another colleague. Good night.